Did Mike Norvell just save his job with the help of recruiting?
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast a part of your day, each and every day, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We're going to be discussing how coaches, and in this case, Mike Norvell of Florida State, really have an opportunity to save their job, at least historically speaking, by using recruiting. It is something that has gone on for a very long time. It's something they will point to. Hey, we're recruiting well. Don't look at the record. We're going to talk about that because coaching changes. We're going to get to that overall at the end of the show. It all leads into that. Recruiting, how it impacts coaching changes. That is the theme of the entire show. If you have comments in the chat, or if you want to discuss something in specific to Auburn's head coaching position, Florida, Lane Kiffin, LSU, Brian Kelly, Oklahoma State, Oregon State, I don't care which job it is that you're interested in talking about, make your comments known in the chat. And if you have anything you want to add about Florida State and Mike Norvell, please fire away. I am also the host of Locked On Seminoles. And to say the least, the topic of Mike Norvell being the head coach at Florida State comes up on my show over there quite a bit. So let's discuss why I'm bringing up this topic first off. And this is the key to the whole show. Norvell has been on the hot seat for over a year. They went 2-10 last year. They win this past weekend. They're at 4-4. It's been a weird year for the Noles. They beat Bama. And they beat a couple of teams that weren't any good. And then they just could not figure it out. Just couldn't figure it out. 4 games in a row they lost before they beat Wake Forest soundly, by the way, 42-7, I believe. But should it be enough if they recruit well down this stretch, and they're closing in on 30 commitments, to get him to keep his job? What is the complexity of that? I want you to think about that question. I want to go over some commitments, some decommitments, and all of it. We can apply this to different schools. It's going to be important. We're going to come back to the Mike Norvell discussion, and the last guy I'm going to talk about is their most recent commit. But let's talk about the guys that have pledged across the country or decommitted and then pledged elsewhere over the last 24 hours or so. Let's go with Eric Perry. As a reminder, he was committed to Auburn. He's a kid that lives just outside of Memphis. He was a running back recruit. He plays quarterback in high school at DeSoto Central, committed to Auburn a long time ago, but he has flipped to Memphis. So not only did you lose a recruit if you're Auburn after you got rid of Freeze, he's going to a G6 school. That's a tough look, but he's a local kid. He lives probably 15, 20 minutes from Memphis. Dalen Green, one of the kids that Florida State got to flip, he was a local player, close to Tallahassee, committed to Arkansas. They had fired their coach. He flipped to Florida State yesterday. We'll talk about him more here in just a minute. Aaron Thomas, ironically, a Florida State icon, if you will, because his dad, Aaron Thomas, was a starter on the 99 Noles team that won the national title. He was an offensive lineman. So's his kid. He was committed to Ohio State. He decommitted from the Buckeyes. He plays at Mountain Point High School in the greater Phoenix area. He was committed to Ohio State, had offers across the country. A&M, Florida State, Ohio State, everybody recruited him. He's now on the market. Is Florida State a possibility? You bet. This one stings. Talking about coaches being fired. Again, this is the theme of today's show. Aiden Reeder from St. X, one of the best programs in Ohio, down in Cincinnati, was committed to Wisconsin. Defensive player. That is supposed to be Luke Fickell's bag. They're even losing defensive players at Wisconsin with the pathetic season they're having. Right now, he just got done coming off a visit to Michigan. I would assume he's going to commit to the Wolverines pretty soon. We'll see, but Aiden Reeder's a pretty good player. Really liked his film. Jet Walker decommits from West Virginia, and he has flipped to Minnesota. This is kind of random. He's from Georgetown, Texas. Pretty good player. Running back, got some size, 6'2", 215. Minnesota dipping into Texas. That just shows you how wild recruiting is in 2025. Beckett Schreiber, offensive tackle, 6'5", 280 pounds. This is another kid. It just shows you the shots and the hits just keep coming for Wisconsin. He's from Madison, Wisconsin. He was committed to Washington State. He decommits and flips to Minnesota, an arch rival of the Badgers. And he's from Madison, where the University of Wisconsin is. It just, again, recruiting is wild. I would have never envisioned that. but it just shows you how difficult it is. Now, just straight up commitments. This first one is cool because this shows you how broad college football is. Beckett Schreiber was the last kid, kind of a local deal. This is his polar opposite. And I'm probably going to mispronounce the name. Adrian Bakibel. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but he's from Sweden. And he's going to Kansas State. 6'3", 290, defensive tackle. The Wildcats go all the way across the pond to get somebody from Europe. That's pretty wild. Braden Stevens from Platte City, Missouri. He's a slot receiver, 5'8", 165 pounds. He is also committed to Minnesota, so the Gophers definitely getting it done. Joshua Pittman, 6'3", 210-pound linebacker from Suffolk, Virginia, plays at Kings Fork High School. He has pledged to Pitt. That's a linebacker. That defense is nasty. They got a couple of guys who are probably going to play in the NFL. Pretty easy for Pitt to sell the linebacker spot right now. And now for the Florida State part, and this will be the theme for the rest of the show. Franklin Whitley, like I said, should it be a big part of whether or not a school keeps a coach or not, because all of a sudden they're recruiting better? The hype around Norvell in the 23 season, he found a way to mesh the portal players together, and they won. And they did. They were really, really good. But he's never been a good high school recruiter. The end of last year, when he was basically forced to make changes or he was going to get canned, they started recruiting better. They finished that cycle much better than anticipated. And they've recruited pretty well for the class of 26. Well, in the last 24 to 48 hours, they've got like 3 commitments. A couple other guys, Chris Carbon, defensive end from Hillgrove High School. On my Locked On Seminoles channel, I featured him yesterday. He's a player. Good player just outside of Atlanta. Okay, that's good news. And they also got the kid I talked about just a minute ago, Dalen Green, a strong safety linebacker type that's an athlete, a big-time hitter from the local area, but they missed out on him originally to Arkansas. They were just flat out recruited for a local kid. That's never good. He has flipped from Arkansas now that that staff has been flipped over, and T. Will, the guy that recruited him to Arkansas, was fired. He's committed to FSU. And then finally here, Franklin Whitley, 6'6", 265 out of Greenville, South Carolina, picks the Noles. Should that be a scenario where it helps galvanize them? And should Florida, this going on further on this, should the Noles send all their money into the NIL because they don't want to join this coaching market? I guess we could throw that in there too. It's an interesting topic. I don't think there's a good answer to this. There are a lot of people that are probably not very excited if you're a Florida State fan about the prospects of keeping Norvell. But 2 points here. Number one, I hope I'm wrong on this because, again, I run Locked On Seminoles and I don't want to see Norvell back. I'll just be honest. If they're going to do it, this is the first thing that usually happens. Instead of the money from the boosters going to the coaching buyout, look at Florida last year. They dumped it into NIL to keep players. Is FSU taking a playbook from the Gators? It's not a new one, really. It's one the Gators have stole before because it's been used for decades. It's a different era with NIL, but money to get rid of the firing squad and go with the recruiting pitch is a different thing for different schools. They don't want to talk about it that way, but it's something that gets discussed behind closed doors. The firing squad comes out and says, we just didn't get it done. We just finally came to this conclusion. Baloney. There's no way that Norvell's ouster hasn't been discussed for a long time at FSU, just like at Arkansas, just like at Oklahoma State, just like at Virginia Tech, etc. These things usually accumulate over time. Nobody's ever honest about it at the podium, but they'll use recruiting because they don't want to spend the money on the buyout. What is it for Norvell? North of $50 million. It's not friendly. And they just hired coordinators that were pretty well thought of. Between Norvell and the 2 coordinators, it's $60+ million just on those 3 people. If he was to get fired and those 2 would be gone as well. That's a lot. So my guess is, yes, they are using the recruiting crutch, dumping money in. That is my guess. I have no inside knowledge, but that's what I think. I'm not saying that staff isn't trying to apply themselves and do a good job. They've done a pretty good job with this class. They've got a lot of underrated kids. With that being stated, do I think it's the best decision? No, but it's also not my money that would be spent, again, to get rid of Norvell, get rid of the rest of the staff that doesn't end up staying. And then you got to go buy another staff too. That's really what it is. And then you have to look at Auburn, LSU, Florida, Penn State, all these jobs that are open. It's tough. It's really, really tough. Do you have the opportunity to make it happen quickly and flip it over with the right hire? Yes. My guess is they don't want to spend the money that is needed, especially with the competition that is out there. With that being stated, when we come back, I want to talk about how recruiting, Florida State, again, is the example, is probably going to help decide whether some other jobs are saved and who has a chance to push forward because some of these schools are chopping schools off. We're going to talk about that next, right here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to the fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com right now to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you once again for making the Portal Podcast a part of your day, each and every day, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We're going to be doing noon Eastern live shows talking about recruiting, the carousel, and of course, the transfer portal and NIL. They are all intertwined, and there's no better show, honestly, than the one we're doing right now to talk about that, because coaching firings going along with recruiting are hand in hand. Mike Norvell is the example, but you can also look at that in other lights. Here's my example. I brought up earlier that Billy Napier, he was on the hot seat last year, probably should have got fired. But for whatever reason, the Florida brass decided, you know what? We're going to dump this cash into NIL, and we're going to finish this recruiting class strong. Florida did pretty good at the end of last season. They played pretty well. Let's see what we can do next year. Obviously, it didn't work, but they did get some pretty good recruits. Now the question becomes, and this is a big one, who falls into that category this year beyond Florida State? And not just on the side of saving jobs, but you also have the other side of it where you can add to your job. Like when your rival, your in-state rival, or your next door neighbor is down, can you go out and pilfer their recruits? This is pilfering season. We're in November. We are less than a month away from National Signing Day. 29 days. What does that mean? There's going to be a lot of players across the high school ranks taking visits. Just as an example, Aaron Thomas, the big-time offensive tackle in Phoenix, decommitted from Ohio State. That's a really good prospect. Is he going to be a guy that ends up going to Florida State? Is it A&M? Is it somebody else? Let's see where the visit's taken. But you've got a chance now. Maybe Arizona State gets the local kid. Who knows? This is the time to pilfer, because if Ohio State, who's the number one team in the country, can lose recruits, anybody can. So let's look at it this way. Kentucky coach is on the hot seat, but he's got a big contract. I think it's $30 million guaranteed. That's tough. Are they going to get rid of him? Probably not. But anybody recruiting against Kentucky, like Louisville, who's having a good season, do you think Braum is not going to go after some of the UK recruits? Remember, Braum played at University of Louisville. Braum played quarterback at Louisville. He's tired of hearing about Kentucky. I can guarantee you they're going to go after him. Secondarily, that's just a small snippet. Let's look at the situation in the state of South Carolina. It could go both directions. There's talk about Beamer leaving to go to Virginia Tech. So if you're Clemson, you can use that against them. But you just lost at home if you're Clemson to Duke. Regardless the perception of what's reality and what's real, Duke can't win at Clemson. The fans aren't going to accept it. The in-state recruits aren't going to accept it. That's probably going to hurt Clemson. So if you're South Carolina, you say, they just lost to Duke. Beamer's not going anywhere. What are you talking about? That's recruiting in this era. There are going to be a lot of little back and forth to try to get kids that are committed from one school to flip to the other by way of coming to home games. South Carolina Clemson game, I don't know off the top of my head where that game's at this year. The sidelines for the recruits in that game will be fascinating because they're recruiting the same kids. Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina. That's the base for both schools. That'll be a fascinating one. Speaking of North Carolina, do you think that anybody that recruits inside the Tar Heel State is not going to use the Belichick situation against them They've been terrible. They're going to try to pilfer some kids, and they got some good recruits. Let's go down to the state of Florida further. Why would you go to Miami? You're not going to get developed. They just got beat again by a team they shouldn't have. They just lost to SMU. Guarantee you teams are going to negative recruit against the Hurricanes all day long. Same thing with Florida State. They're up and down. Why would you go there? Follow the visits. This is decommitment season, and I expect it to be absolutely buck wild between now and National Signing Day. And those 2-3 days leading up and the day of will be incredible. I might do a 5-hour live show on National Signing Day because, quite frankly, I have no idea how many decommitments there will be because of the NIL, all the coaching firings. We still got more to come. This is going to be a wild offseason in general, but there's more coaching changes probably going to happen before the season even ends. Wisconsin's a possibility. Michigan State's a possibility. Again, not likely at Kentucky, but it could happen. What about Baylor? Dave Aranda seems like he's been on the hot seat forever. There are all kinds of different places that can change coaches and follow the visits. The recruits for these schools, are they flipping? Maybe, maybe not. But if they're taking visits elsewhere, absolutely a possibility. Now let's look at it from one other perspective that I think is kind of interesting. Oklahoma. They went to Tennessee this past weekend. Brent Venables has been on the hot seat coming into this year, but they've had a pretty good season. They've had a pretty good season. Got 2 losses. Mateer's been banged up in a few different ways, and he's, running quarterback, but he played well enough. And Xavier Robinson played really well at running back. That defense ate up Tennessee. Fans might start feeling a little better. Do not be surprised if the Sooners, especially in Dallas, that's their number one spot, if they flip somebody. I'm not saying it'll be Texas or Texas A&M, but it could be anybody. Who's flipping who? These are the things that you got to really think about, because if you want to keep your job, recruiting in today's world, because it's so public, is vital. Venables, again, they've got a chance at the playoff. If they go to Bama, they don't play this weekend, they're off. But the weekend after, I'm picking Oklahoma to win that game because they run the ball better and they stop the run better. I like those categories a lot. I'm picking them to win in Tuscaloosa. I would say it's pretty safe assumption that he's going to keep his job. We'll see. But they also have a couple other games, including LSU at home at the end of the year. Who knows what LSU is going to do? And let's finish this segment on the LSU note. There is no job in the country with a more loyal in-state base than LSU in the Bayou. Ohio's pretty loyal. Alabama's pretty loyal. But the Bayou is just different. For somebody who's lived there, and I went to grad school there for a little while, it's a different deal. I know that LSU doesn't have a head coach currently, but Frank Wilson, the longtime coach out of New Orleans, I believe he was at St. Aug back in the day. He's a loyalist to LSU. I think he's somebody that will galvanize them. If they can figure it out and get a coach named before signing day, who knows? Don't be surprised if LSU adds recruits. It's still LSU. So there's so many little things to talk about. It's a lot of fun. When we come back, I want to talk about a few possible coaching changes and why I would look at them from not only this year's perspective, but next year, in part, due once again, yes, to recruiting. That is next here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show was brought to you by Gametime. College football is as wacky as ever, entertaining as ever, and I personally couldn't be more excited, and I'm sure you are too. Anytime you go to games, the tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, that's a blast. You don't quite like going to a live college football game, but let's be real, actually getting tickets to see your favorite team play, it can be more of the battle than the actual game itself on the field, endless queues, hidden fees, and prices jumping out at you at checkout. That's why this guy uses Gametime. I just bought 2 tickets to go see a basketball game, and I was done in less than 5 minutes. And that includes putting in my credit card information, and I was done. All I did, because I've got the app on my phone, I just went in, typed in the team name, looked for the seats that I'm looking for, checked it out, and you can see your seat view right there on your phone, your tablet, whatever, and you can be done, again, in less than 5 minutes. I was in and out. Not a problem at all. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, use promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Gametime app today. Thank you once again for making this show your first stop each and every day. Got, again, live shows at noon. I've got to show up early every morning. So we got 2 shows during the week. We'll have some weekend action as well. The Portal Podcast is going to be a place for you to get all kinds of information regarding coaching changes, transfer portal, commitments, decommitments, and then just anything else that's going on. I'll talk a little college football playoff from here and there too, but it's a lot of fun. So with that, I see I've got one comment in the chat. I'll check it out real quick. Luke, if FSU wins out, could they potentially finish with a top 10 class? Sure. 100%. I think that is a very worthwhile question, actually, because Florida State's somewhere like number 14 or something like that. Matter of fact, I've got it here. Let's see where we got the Noles. Florida State's recruiting class right now, for those of you that are curious, they've got 28 commitments and they're ranked 13th. I mean, that's only 3 spots. That wouldn't be all that difficult, to be honest with you. And let's just look at it just for a second. They've got a lot of kids from the areas that you should be recruiting. Sarasota, Southwest DeKalb High School, Ernest Rankins, one of the best defensive linemen in the country, just outside Atlanta. Devin Carter, another Atlanta area kid. His dad, Dexter Carter, was a stud for the Noles in the 80s and played in the NFL as a running back. Xavier Tiller, another Atlanta area kid out of Langston Hughes, big-time flex tight end. Isaiah Williams, he's from the greater Orlando area. He's an outside linebacker, very talented. Jay Timmons, his dad played at Florida State, although that could be trending towards Ohio State. He took a visit there recently. We'll see if the Noles can hold on to him. Brandon Bennett, one of the fastest players in the country. He's out of American Heritage in South Florida. He's a 10-4 100-meter kid. Ephraim White, he's a guy that's been on the radar for a long time at a program that's very well respected in the Sunshine State, Vero Beach, receiver, DB. He can play just about anything. Jaden O'Neal, big pocket passer who can move. He can run RPO for you. He's the quarterback in this class. Jonah Winston, yes, that is Jameis Winston's younger brother, wide receiver out of the greater Birmingham area. Jason Lopez, who just broke a couple of records in the state of Florida for receiving yardage and all that. He's out of Shaman, out of Madonna, same high school as Jeremiah Smith, JoJo Trader, and a whole bunch of other guys. He's going to be the slot receiver in this class. Tico Crittenden, kid out of Lithonia, Georgia, another guy from the greater Atlanta area. They hit the spots they should. And then just adding in some other guys like Sean Johnson. He's out of Archbishop Spalding. He's a safety that's from D.C. You'll gladly take him. He's a good player. Tadarius Hughes, a kid from South Florida, another safety, really athletic, 6'3.5", 200 or 180 pounds. They've got talent in this class. So overall, again, can they have a top 10 group? 100%. My question for you, and just in general, how many people in the Florida State upper echelon of the boosters want to go this direction? I have no idea. But if this is what they want, if they don't want to try and choke down that contract for Norvell, this is really your only other option. Florida State fan base is not going to be happy unless Norvell's gone, as a whole. We know that. But if it's too much, you might as well get the talent. I will gladly sign off on that part. You need to recruit high school better. This gives you a chance. Is it going to be enough to offset what's been going on? Probably not. I don't think so. But at the same time, I look at it like this. Florida State needs a talent infusion. They're going to have to spend some money in the portal as well. So we'll see. But again, I don't know what's going to happen. But it looks like to me Florida State is at least leaning towards keeping Norvell and dumping cash into the recruiting ranks, because I don't think all these commitments are by coincidence. I really don't. Luke, once again, who is the highest rated realistic flip target for Florida State, if you had to say? A lot of that stuff is done behind the closed doors. Good question. There's probably a handful in the state of Florida, stuff that won't be reported. That's just how this works. But 2 points. Number one, as always, follow the visits. Follow the visits. Who visits Florida State for the last game against Virginia Tech? That'll be a part of it. And number two, you just kind of have to look at the spots they need guys. They've gotten a couple of defensive linemen here recently, one of which I think can play weak side defensive end. Very, very important. That young man is Chris Carbon. I put a film review and discussion points about him yesterday on Locked On Seminoles for anybody who wants to check it out. It's pretty thorough, but they need another one. Wherever that young man is from, they need 2 pure weak side end pass rushers in this class. Does Florida State get it? I don't know, but it's possible. To that end, the other part of it, I don't know where they're comfortable ending this class numbers-wise. They're pushing towards 30 kids. Is there anybody that's going to leave? Like if they lose Jay Timmons, they need another corner. That's a stud, and he's a legacy. That would hurt. There's a ton of guys in the state of Florida and Georgia alone that can play corner, though. It never feels good to lose a legacy recruit and one as good as Timmons. He's a top 100 recruit. But I'm never really worried about the Noles at corner. That's most schools do. Florida State's in North Florida. It's not that hard. So we'll see. There's probably, if I was to guess, at least one more surprise somewhere. They've got a running back or two they could get. They need to get somebody at that spot, but it'll also depend on numbers. We'll see. Carson Baker, maybe the stud out of Langston Hughes, and his teammate too, the other running back there after both those kids. There's all kinds of guys that can end up flipping. But a last point here, I'd mentioned earlier, Clemson's not exactly killing it here. Don't be surprised. They've had a few cracks in their recruiting foundation. Do not be surprised if we see some more Clemson kids decommit. Florida State could be on that radar because they recruit the Carolinas pretty hard. As a matter of fact, Franklin Whitley, the defensive lineman they just got to commit today, he's from Greenville, South Carolina. That's a kid Clemson would have taken. If Clemson was sitting at 7-1 or something right now, would he be committed to Florida State? Probably not. He liked the Florida State visit. They've got a pretty good defensive line coach, call him Pot Roast, and he's a good recruiter. I would imagine Florida State will be very active in the Carolinas. Clemson's vulnerable. South Carolina's vulnerable. North Carolina is a terrible program right now. They're getting a little better, but they're still bad. NC State's been up and down. They did just beat Georgia Tech, but they're not scaring anybody. There are a lot of possibilities just in the Carolinas, in addition to the state of Florida, where Florida, you don't think Florida State's not going after some of the Gator recruits? Are you kidding me? Caden Hall, before I forget, that's a kid that grew up rooting for Florida State. He's big time. Safety out of the greater Pensacola area, 100%. 100%. He's just one of them. LSU, some of those kids are from Florida. One of them's a pass rusher from Orlando. One is from, guess where? Pensacola again. That's an elite kid. They have to recruit those guys. All kinds of possibilities there. And then let's not forget the other one, just a little bit northwest, Auburn. They just fired their coach. Florida State has a plethora of options around them. There is no excuse. If they are going the Mike Norvell is staying route, again, I don't support that, but if that's the route they're going, Auburn, LSU, Florida, possibly NC State, Dave Doran might step down. They're not that great anyway. North Carolina, Lord only knows what's going to happen. South Carolina's iffy. Maybe Beamer takes the Virginia Tech job and the Virginia Tech job is open. All of that. And on top of it, Clemson, I mean, this is the first time in a very long time they're vulnerable. They are not very good. There are many opportunities for FSU to go grab somebody. And that's the same with any of those schools, for any other program that is located in the South. You don't think Kirby, DeBoer, guys like that, they're going to be trying to get these kids on campus. Like Oklahoma goes to Bama, not this weekend, but next. You better believe that Bama is trying to get some of those kids to come, like Auburn players. They're committed. Absolutely. This is flip season. Maybe that's what I should have led with. This is just flip season. With all the coaching change, anything is possible. If Alabama and Georgia don't get some flips, possibly even Florida State from this point forward, I would be very surprised. Why? Because all the coaches around them are either on the hot seat or already fired. That's a big deal. With that, I appreciate everybody stopping in. This is a lot of fun. This is the most fun that I have is talking about this stuff. So let's keep it going. But Luke's got another one here. Have you heard anything on Calvin Russell, Trenton Henderson, Derek Cooper, Carson Baker? Any of them are realistic, blah, blah, blah. Well, Calvin Russell, I don't think it'll be Florida State unless they just dump a ton of money on his door. Prove me wrong. Trenton Henderson, I don't know personally. I've met Calvin. He's a pretty thorough guy. Trenton is the defensive end I mentioned from Pensacola. I couldn't remember his name off the top of my head. He's committed to LSU. I mean, he's 2.5 hours from Tallahassee, driving slow. They need to be able to get him on campus at least. But he's committed to LSU. Is he dialed in with the NIL contract and how that's worded? I don't know. but you got to try. We'll see. Derek Cooper, I highly doubt is going to go anywhere other than Texas from what I've heard. We'll see. Haven't heard anything recent on Carson Baker, but with him being committed to Florida, I'm sure he's in a holding pattern. Ask me about Carson Baker in 2 weeks. By then, there should be some form of information about Lane Kiffin. Right now, it's really hard. Ole Miss probably going to finish 11-1. That's my guess. If they do you really think Lane's going to give up the chance to go to the playoff to take the Florida job? Because they need him to take it sooner rather than later. And is Florida going to make the exception and say, to heck with the recruiting class, heck with the portal, we're just going to get Lane in mid-January? That will rub a lot of Florida people wrong. So that's a really convoluted situation, and you can't know for sure if you're the Florida staff that's still there, the administration, who's going to sign, and vice versa. Like, it'll be a signing day thing for Baker and a lot of guys. I'm sure Carson Baker is going to get phone calls from Ohio State. He's going to get phone calls from Alabama and everybody else. Who knows? Bottom line, that's a possibility, but Florida State's on that board. They impressed Carson Baker when he visited last. Who knows? If Florida State does good down the stretch and wins 3 of their last 4, it's a possibility that Florida State becomes a hot recruiting team. And then going back to your original question, maybe FSU ends up being, possibly here, ends up being a top 10 recruiting class. Got to add a couple more guys, and maybe some schools that are ahead of them lose some players. Anything is simply possible. Recruiting this year is really wild. Alan Beck, and quietly, Lane works in the shadows, 100%. Who knows what that means, though, for recruits? Look at it this way. If you're a football recruit and you're looking at Ole Miss, you don't know. If you're a football recruit and you're looking at LSU, you don't know. Lane could end up there. Don't think it'll be Auburn. I doubt it. And if Florida State came open, I don't think so. But that Florida job's probably the leader in the clubhouse if he does change jobs. I personally think he'll stay at Ole Miss because of the timing. That's my guess. But I have no inside information on that. And I'm not sure Lane Kiffin knows. He may not have really put a lot of thought into it yet because he's trying to get his team to the playoff. The timing now with the portal being January 2nd through the 16th, there's only one window, by the way, for those you don't know. And National Signing Day is December 3rd. So we are 29 days away. 29. With all of that combined, there is nothing good for coaching changes. There's nothing. Any team in contention, which that's what most of the coaches that are desired because they're headed towards the playoff, some other school, they don't want to wait because you're going to really put yourself behind the 8 ball with your roster. There's nothing anybody can do about it. It's just a timing deal. So I'm curious to see, as Alan Beck mentioned here, Kiffin working behind the scenes. That can mean a lot of things. Who knows? Until he comes out and openly says there are no jobs that I'm taking other than the Ole Miss job, highly doubt that. He's a consideration for at least 2 schools, being LSU and Florida. So that's in addition to where he's at now at Ole Miss. And that sets the market because he's pretty much the top guy that's possible right now. You know, Brom and some other guys are still possible too. Until they make that formal statement publicly on camera, there's zero chance I'm leaving. How much stock do you put in this stuff? Behind the scenes is the, as they say, the understatement of the day. Thank everybody once again for stopping in. We're going to be doing these live shows every day at noon. I have a lot of fun with them. The latest recruiting information, intel on coaching searches. We're going to talk a lot about Auburn probably this week because it's the newest job. I have some thoughts on John Summerall. We're going to be talking about him on Locked On Seminoles because I still think he'd be a great fit at FSU. There's all kinds of different candidates to discuss. It's a lot of fun. In addition to the transfer portal, recruiting, decommitments, everything that goes on with building rosters. That's what the Portal Podcast is about. And of course, to build a roster, you got to have head coaches. So that's a daily thing as well. Thank you to everybody that stopped in again today. We will see you again soon.